In this conversation, Franklin Swann joins me. He is the host of the World Needs Men podcast. He's also a loving husband and a loving father and CEO of a super successful business. But Franklin is going to dive into a conversation today about being a heroic father. Together, we are going to navigate the complexities that we are faced with each day. I know as a dad that you have a lot of weight on your shoulders. And this conversation is designed to take that weight off by still focusing you on your most important job, being a husband, being a father. Franklin has a really unique experience. Franklin mentored a fatherless young man for 10 years. And I wanted to dive into that experience. And I wanted Franklin to be able to contrast that with being a father of his own kids. So Franklin's going to dive in and he's going to share with you the profound impact that a father's presence has in a child's life. And he's going to talk about the transformative power of intentional fatherhood and the dire consequences of when a father is absent. You listen to this episode, you will gain insights into balancing family time and supporting your children's activities without sacrificing meaningful connection with your kids. You will learn practical strategies for being present and intentional with your family amidst the demands of modern life that we all feel on the day to day. And you're going to understand the importance of nurturing your spousal relationship through regular date nights and setting an example for your kids. And those three things are going to help you become a heroic father. This conversation with Franklin Swann from the World Needs Men podcast starts right now. Franklin, welcome to the Dad's Making a Difference podcast. Great to see you today.
Cam, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
Man, I'm excited. I'm excited to speak with you because I'm so passionate about connecting with dads who are like, wait a second, we need to start making a difference here. We need to start changing the narrative, start connecting with our kids, start being better husbands. And in our connection call last week, I was like, this is a guy who's on a mission now. And so excited to have this conversation with you. Why don't you share with our listeners, the guys listening to this right now, a little bit about you and maybe dive into a little bit about what it was like for you growing up and, relationship with your dad.
Of course. Yeah, you and I hit it off very quickly when we were on our intro, and I've been excited ever since to come on and just have a good conversation with you. So I am from Texas first and have a beautiful wife. We're coming up on 18 years of marriage and got two amazing kids. Got 11-year-old son and 9, soon to be 10-year-old daughter. And both of them are very active. And my wife and I are very, just very involved in their lives right now. This weekend, we're both like divide and conquer. One's going one direction, one's going the other, both out of town.
Yeah.
Just to, one's doing Odyssey of the Mind, the other one's doing a cheer competition. So,
Awesome.
so life is very full on that front. And grew up in a small East Texas town, Tyler, Texas, and had a great childhood growing up. Dad that took me hunting and fishing and really spent a lot of intentional time with me. Great parents. We've got a younger brother who's doing amazing work, and he's got an organization called sight.org that he operates, and they do cataract surgeries in Togo, West Africa. So amazing there. And then I run a 129-year-old family company that's been in my family for 5 generations now. And so I'm the CEO and head that up every day. And I'm super passionate about really men stepping up into the roles that their families need them to assume. And I think that there just are a lot of men that are struggling these days to figure things out on different fronts. And I think that more men like you, to be just raising the alarm and kind of sounding the battle cry, so to speak, to help encourage and equip men to be the husbands and fathers and leaders that we need them to be. And I've just seen firsthand the effects of that. I've myself gone through my own dark time and season where I wasn't showing up as a great husband and father that I wanted to be and my family needed. And that's just really convicted me to not sit on the sidelines and to stand up and say something, because I know men need this.
Yeah, absolutely. And your background in connecting with young men and also is important. Uh, you did some. We had a conversation. You told me about like a mentoring relationship that you
Hmm.
had, and it was through that mentoring relationship you started to recognize the importance of a dad being present and being in that space. Do you mind diving into that story?
Yeah, and like I said, I grew up. My parents had a great marriage
Mhm.
and you know, had a really good childhood. And so, uh, when I came into my family business, a part of me wanted, my wife and I didn't have kids yet, and a part of me just wanted to serve in some way. And
Mhm.
I originally got into, oh gosh, what, junior achievement.
Mm.
And I did a
Yeah.
little bit of work with junior achievement. And so that was more of, going into a classroom and sharing some stuff with these young kids. And that was really good. But I came away from that really going, I want to pour into and make a significant difference with one kid.
Mhm.
And so I found a local mentoring organization, signed up, got all hooked up with them, and they paired me up with this young man. And at the time, he was in third grade, and I remember meeting him. And I mean, he's a young kid, third grade, right?
Great. Yeah.
Um, and man, he came from a really tough environment. His mom was 16 when she had him. Really was being raised by his grandmother. Um, and he had a couple of younger siblings, but his dad was not in the picture in any meaningful way. And I just saw it as an opportunity to help a kid. But man, I just got to, I really got up close and got to see what happens when men just abandon their post, so to
Yeah.
speak, right? They just kind
Yeah.
of step out of the picture. And so his grandmother had actually signed him up for this program. So we start hanging out. And in most of the times, I would just go pick him up after school, would bring him home, and me and my wife would just have him join us for dinner.
Mm.
Like that was that was kind of the meat of it, if you will, in terms of what the relationship looked like. We would also go out and do fun stuff and um, you know, and get more creative. But I think of, what was the real value we were able to provide. It was just the picture of a home where a husband and wife were able to sit down around a table and just have a dinner, TV off, and just talk.
Mm.
And as I look back at it, it ended up being a 10-year relationship with him. We
Wow.
even kind of phased out of the mentoring program because he went in, into middle school and then into high school. I was there for his high school graduation, for birthdays and stuff. And we even along the way then had children, had our daughter and our son, and he was there kind of along that. So he got to know them a little bit. And it got to where it was no longer him and then my wife and I at the table. Then my son was added to that table, and then my daughter was added to that table. And it was just a really cool relationship. And I feel like I probably got more out of it than he did,
Mm.
honestly. It was very humbling. It made me very grateful to know how impactful my dad being in my life was.
Mhm.
When I saw the opposite, it was something that was a tremendously valuable use of my time. Every Thursday I'd drive over there, pick him up from school, and we'd hang out.
Yeah. When you talk about the relationship you had with your dad, and now you had this mentoring relationship with this young man who, over a decade, you were able to see him grow. But that relationship in itself is different than a father son relationship.
Yep.
What did you notice in your relationship with this young man? Like, what did you learn through that had shaped you to be a good father when your own son was born?
Yeah, I think it just helped me to realize just how profound the presence of a father is.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, just in every sense, when a dad's around, uh, I mean, obviously he needs to not be like an abusive father or anything, but when a man is present and there to love his family and to be there for his kids, the family will do so much better. Just
Yeah.
plain and simple. I mean, we can look at all the statistics and all the numbers, and everything points that when a dad's removed from the home, then everything gets worse for the kids. Period.
Hmm.
They suffer the most from it. And so I think it just made me very aware of just how important my role in their life is. Two, on a side note, my wife and I, it took quite a while for us to have a family. We went through the whole IVF journey for many years, had some miscarriages along the way. So it was a really rough road, which I think helped me to be even more grateful and just appreciate having a son, having a daughter, because I just know how hard it was for us to have them. So and I look at that as even a gift, but I think it just made me hyper aware of just how important my role is with my son and daughter, and what the opposite of that looks like, and how thinly that stretched that family. His grandmother is an absolute saint and angel, and by the time we got to the end of our, or towards the back after part of the relationship, it was him she was taking care of, along with I think four or five other children.
Wow.
And I have no idea how she managed that and did it.
Yeah.
Um,
Incredible.
I mean, it was really on her, and it's scary because I see, like, in a situation like that, there is this grandparent generation that is supporting and taking care of a lot of kids that
Yeah.
when they go away, it's really scary to think what happens after that.
That's bad news, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. I see this every day, Franklin.
Yeah.
In my role, I can think of a grandmother in the community that I live in who has six minors under her care. She's in her 80s. And these are six minors who have come from her kids'
Hmm.
families.
Hmm.
And her kids have fallen victim to addiction,
Yep.
substance abuse. Uh, Three of them have passed, three of them died from their addiction. And she has taken these grandchildren in and is caring for them.
Hmm.
And as much as she can do, and I think about you described this grandmother in your story as a saint. Like she went above and beyond. She did all these amazing things. And I think of this woman in our community the same way. But what happens when she moves on? Like what happens when she passes away? And what happens to these kids? Because grandma is great. And I had a great relationship with my grandma, even though I grew up in a really solid home. Like my grandma was probably one of my closest extended family members, but that's not dad.
Hmm.
Like that's not dad. And you mentioned the importance for men to step into their roles as father. And I would love to get into that conversation. Uh, we talk about the role as father. I have my opinions and my take on what that means. But for you, what's your take on the role that the man plays in the home when it comes to being a father?
Yeah. The first thing he has to be is present.
Mm,
He needs to be there mentally, emotionally, in addition to being there physically. And I even think spiritually, like, men need to be in a position of leading their families, and that doesn't mean managing them or bossing them around, but he's there to stand in the gap.
mhm,
He's there to create a sense of safety and security for his wife and children. I believe that a man should be there to help provide, and that can. There's a lot of different ways that can look nowadays. But even if the mom is out as the breadwinner, well, he's taking up part of that role to be supportive inside the home. So it doesn't have to be like completely like rigid in what that looks like, but he is showing up present, contributing, and the kids know that dad is there, that dad loves them, and there's just a sense of security that comes from that's priceless. I don't think it's that complicated of a thing. It's challenging to be a dad. I mean, we were even talking before this, I mean, my son left the front door open last night. The dog got out, and 15 minutes before we realized, so I mean, so kids can be frustrating and challenging and all that, just like anything. But man, we just got to be there. We got to show up. Like that alone puts your just showing up and being present puts your kids far ahead in life. Like that is the
yeah,
greatest gift that you can give them, is to be there for them physically. And then if you can lead them emotionally and mentally and spiritually, I mean, that is the greatest gift you can give your kids, period.
mhm, yeah. I agree. I agree. I think we're called to be as fathers present, but be protectors, keepers of our home and our community, and to show our kids, my daughter, my son, what it means to be a good example, what it means
Mm-hmm.
to help others, be for my son, what it means to be a strong, confident, a little bit aggressive. I think that's okay as a
Yep.
young man, and still have empathy for others, still serve those who are in need, still hold space for the vulnerable.
Yep.
And you can do that. And a father, by being present and engaging in that, you know, that practice with your kids, I think is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to show our sons and daughters what a healthy man looks like,
Mhm.
holistically. I think it's important to demonstrate honorable character. We've both heard the saying, our daughters will marry
Yeah.
the men that, that we are, a man like us. And so that's a very sobering thought. I believe men need to be humble,
Mm.
like demonstrating to their family, like what it looks like to apologize,
Right.
to set their ego and their pride aside, and to be there and to do what needs to be done for them. And finally, I think men need to be heroic. I mean,
I like that.
too too many men sit back, don't step up, don't take a stand, don't say what needs to be said. And I think we need to be bold and we need to be heroic for our families. I was having a conversation with a gentleman earlier today, one of my coaches, and I said, I had this thought. If you think about all the superheroes that are out there, Superman, Spider-Man, Batman, all of them,
Yeah.
none of them are dads,
Mm, that's right.
right? We are the superheroes for our kids. Like we need to think of ourselves and step into this role where it's like we're the ones that they really need. It's not, my son loves superheroes and he's all into that. That's great. Like none of them in those roles like are positioned as dads. And I think dads have the real opportunity to step up and be the real superheroes in their kids' lives, even though their kids won't recognize that or see them as that. That's the reality of the power men have when it comes to their role as a father and what that means to their kids and for their kids as they grow and develop.
Yeah. I love that. Let's break that down because I love that idea of that we need to be heroic. So right away you said that, like writing it down. So
Okay.
what does it mean to be heroic as a dad?
I think it's being courageous,
Yeah.
and I think it's not just the big things, right? It's the little things. It can be everything from if there's a bump in the night, I'm the one who gets out of bed and checks on it, not
Mhm.
my wife, you know? So it's having courage. It's being willing to stand in the gap between your kids and the world and all the influences and things that are trying to influence them in a negative way and take their attention and all of that. It's being willing to set your own uh, goals and the things that you're after aside and put your kids first. That's a really good, you bring up a point. I need to dissect even more. Like, what does it mean to be heroic? I just know that that's like something that is important that I know that every man should be thinking about when it
Right.
comes to their kids.
And I
But
think it might be individual, right? So
yeah.
when it comes to each dad, like what does it heroic mean to my kids? Not
Hmm.
to somebody else's kids, not to the kids in the community, but for me to be heroic for my family, what does that look like? And I like that you said take action because there's a lot of times where I see fathers who want to be heroic.
Hmm.
Let's just call it a theme. They want to be heroic, but they're not quite sure what to do. So they don't do anything.
Hmm.
And being heroic can be just like, I love the example. Bump in the night, I get out of bed, I go check out what it is because I have courage, I'm taking action, and I'm being present and intentional with what I'm doing. If there's kids out on the street who are being loud and rambunctious at 11:30 at night, and my wife is like, "Oh, those kids are so annoying." I don't really want to go out there and get into a confrontation with a group of teenage, but I get up, I go outside, and just because I'm there, they leave. Okay, I've done something. And then right away, my wife's like, "Oh, thank you." I'm like, "Oh, I didn't really do anything. I just opened the door, you know?"
Hmm.
And so your kids start to see you take action. And you mentioned about, we do our own thing, but we still prioritize our kids. And in that, they can see that we are driven to accomplish something. You can be a driven entrepreneur, business owner. You could be a coach. You could do all these things for other people and for yourself, but they know that at the end of the day, they're important.
Hmm.
My dad's still like, my dad's more important than his business call. My dad's more, my dad knows that I'm more important than those kids that he's coaching. And I think there's this whole idea of being a hero that can be intimidating for dads,
Hmm.
but it doesn't take massive action. It just takes action, like
Yeah.
one thing.
I mean, even a couple other small examples, just to really bring that to life. I think of it's like your kiddo's sick and you need some medicine, and it's 12 o'clock at night, and you're up at Walgreens, and
Yeah.
it's kind of this mindset and mentality of I don't have to do this, I get to do this,
Yeah.
you know, and or it's 9 o'clock. My wife's like, the kids are in bed. I need to go to the grocery store, and I'm like, let me go.
Right.
I'm
Of
not comfortable with you. Can she handle herself? Yes.
course.
However, there's a piece of me where it's like, no, I'm going to go. It's 9 o'clock at night, and I'll go. What do you need? And I'll go take care of that. So it's the most. It's not these, saving someone from a burning building, which it could be that, but most often and most days for most normal men like you and me, it's those small little actions that probably go unnoticed that the kids might not even see, but you're bringing that energetic presence of a man who just steps up and does what's needed in the moment, regardless of what that is. So that's probably the best as I talk through this definition of what does it mean to be heroic. It means doing what needs to be done when it needs to be done.
I like that. I'm going to write a question. If you're listening to this right now, I want you to ask this question of yourself. I'm writing a question down because we're recording this on a Friday. How have I been heroic this week? How have I been a hero to my kids this week? How I've been a hero to my wife this week? I'm going to put that on. I have a whiteboard here behind my monitor. I'm going to put that up there. And I think that's something you've challenged me to do, Franklin, over the next several weeks is to look at that and say, how have I been a hero this week? How have I championed my family, my kids? How have I done the little things that matter? I appreciate you challenging me with that.
Yeah, and it is the little things, right? As we talk through that, it's not the big stuff. It's
Yeah.
literally you being there, you taking that action in the moment. And that is being a modern day hero for our kids in a world where they need us very, very badly.
Yeah. Um, you mentioned raising two kids of your own, and our kids are similar in ages, and they get into all these activities. And I'm curious about your take on this. They get into all these activities that start to come into what has traditionally been family time. You mentioned this weekend you're out and about. My daughter's got a climbing competition. My son's got indoor, they're indoor evaluations because we have snow still, but
Hmm.
they're for outdoor soccer, and he's got all this coming out. And these things that we used to do as family that we prioritized are now starting to get like shorter periods of time
Hmm.
because we're off doing something.
Hmm.
What's your take on how, as fathers, and this idea of being a hero, how can we still control what our family is doing, support what our kids are doing, yet not get sucked into the pressures around us of being involved in everything at once, which splits our family apart?
Hmm. Man, it's so hard. If you've
Yeah.
got kids that are excited about being in activities and
Yeah.
doing things, I mean, it's difficult, and it's a balance because part of you wants to like rein it in and do less than, but then another piece of you is like, but I want them to have these experiences and get to do all
Yeah.
this stuff. So
With that.
I think that it's probably on a family by family basis.
Mhm.
And I think it's how can you be a little more fluid and flexible and get those moments in where you can at the same time. So, we try to have a lot of family dinners, and when we do, we turn off the TV.
Mhm.
So maybe we're having family dinner earlier, maybe it's later. I try to just be intentional and just fit it in, and it's not quite as structured, and I try to be really flexible. Um, but I think it's just every day being, again, coming back to the presence and being intentional with that time. So, okay, our time's condensed, but how much time do we still spend in front of the TV or the kids in front of a screen or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be? And so it's like, okay, well, if we're choosing soccer and cheer and these other things that are going to be a priority, what do we need to cut out in other areas to keep that that connection? Another
Mhm.
thing I do, my wife and I do a lot, or regularly scheduled, not scheduled because these are kind of floating too, but we get in a date night pretty much every week.
Yeah, that's excellent.
That right there is really important. I think number one, it keeps us connected and we're better spouses and we're better parents when we're connected and have some time for just us. And then we also demonstrate to our kids that we are putting each other as a priority at times too, and not just them. And so demonstrating date night, I think is really important, but it, everything comes at a cost and a sacrifice. And you just
Yeah.
kind of got to make that determination of how much is too much, and at what point, where do you cut that off and say, okay, we've done as much as we can do, and we can't really go any further.
Yeah. I agree. It is a tender balance of like what we want our kids to be involved in, while what are we prioritizing as a family to be important. Um, I also am very conscious that I have these ideas of what I want family life to be like, but I don't want that to stand in the way of opportunity for my kids. I think,
Mm-hmm.
like you said that, like I want them to be able to have these opportunities. I want them to be active and engaged in community sport and club sport and all these things. But I also want a family that's close and tight knit and supportive of each other. And it's this tender balance back and forth. I appreciate you diving into that question. I was just
Yeah.
really curious.
No, it's hard though.
Yeah. Um, Franklin, I got a question for you. You're a dad. As a dad right now, what is one area that you are excited about or you're diving into an area of growth right now?
I'm always chasing a lot of different areas of growth, I feel like, but especially lately, I feel like, and I've hit on this a lot, but I'm trying to very much to be in the moment when I'm with my family,
Mm.
trying to get better about putting my phone away, about leaving work problems at the office and not ruminating on those in my mind, being more intentional with my kids. I mean, I go up and pray with them every night before bed, and make sure that I spend time with them. Even, coming home and saying, "Hey, do you want to go outside and play? Do you want to
Mm.
go out and throw the football? Do you want to go do some?" So, how can I just take little moments here and there, and it may only be 10 minutes before they're off to their next event, but to be in a deal where we can interact together. Or if my son's like, "Hey, Dad, will you come play Fortnite with me?" And
Mm.
video games are the last thing that I really want to do,
Yeah, me
but
too.
I've have flipped my mindset around this, and it's like, you know what? He's asking me to come connect with him in this way.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you know what? Yes, I will come play Fortnite. I'll get killed right off the bat, and I'm terrible at it, and I'm not going to be any good at it. But I think it's just the skill of slowing down, because we are in such a fast-paced world. Our kids are growing so quickly,
Mhm.
and it's just the accumulation of those little minutes every single day that I'm trying to be very mindful of.
Yeah. Appreciate you answering that. Franklin, if somebody wants to learn more about you, get in contact with you, where can they do that?
Absolutely, yeah. So I actually have a podcast. It's called "The World Needs Men."
Mhm.
And so they can you can find my podcast on all the different platforms that have that. You can also reach out at The World Needs Men on Instagram, and we've got Facebook too. So all the social media stuff.
Amazing. Franklin, I appreciate you. Thank you for taking time away from your family to spend with us today. And if you're listening to this right now, we're going to make sure Franklin's contact information is down in the show notes. Reach out, listen to the podcast. Franklin, thank you so much for being here.
Cam, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.